This is the Extra Point Podcast. During this podcast, we will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the Extra Point.
Hey, welcome to the Extra Point. I'm Cheryl Ross, the Next Steps and Discipleship Pastor here at Southridge Church, and I'm with Scott Beha, our lead pastor. And we are in a series called Asking for a Friend, where we are taking some of the questions that you might have about faith or the Bible and digging into those. And so our question from this Sunday was, what do I say to someone who asks, where was God during their pain? And this is a question that is, we get some version of this every series, as you said, on Sunday. And we like to look for those questions where the heart behind it is genuine and sincere and something that they really need to know the answer to. And so I think one of the things that you did within your teaching on Sunday was share about there are different times that you answer this question in different ways.
Yes.
And I thought that that was an absolutely fantastic way to look at it because often, like, in those moments when people are hurting, like, in the moment, they don't necessarily need you to come in and, like, fix it or be all philosophical, but, like, they need something. And so if you want to just kind of share a little bit more about that and about maybe what those different times might look like.
Yeah, funerals are not times for, like, pontificating whatsoever. Mm-hmm. They're not, like, even, like, when I have to preach a funeral, I will, and again, I won't, like, undermine what I believe the scriptures to say, but there are some nuances surrounding, like, death, eternity, pain, that I may not have to go and make my point at a funeral because that's not the place to do it.
Right.
Right? Like, all right, Grandma died. I get it. I could sit there and tell you why Grandma died and take you all throughout none of that is helpful whatsoever. Like, I could sit there, like, when people are in the midst of pain and they go, why is this happening to me? They don't actually, like, if you're sitting in a hospital room with them, they don't actually want you to answer that question.
Right.
They want you to put your arm around them and go, this sucks. Maybe months down the road, they're in a better place. They go, hey, do you remember when you asked why this was happening? Well, now would you like to have that discussion now? But at the funeral, in the hospital room, right when they get off the phone and they got bad news, the day that they lost their job, whatever it is, they're not looking for a sermon.
Right.
They're just looking for you to be there.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I answered this question Sunday, the first answer is the funeral answer. Where was God in the midst of all of this? Why did all this happen? Listen, God was right there with you, and he's still right there with you. The second two answers are a lot more, hey, down the road we could talk about, like, that God wasn't picking on you in this moment. This is just kind of what happens. And once people are past the initial pain, not that they ever get past the full pain, they're not past the initial pain, a lot of times they're able to look back and go, oh, that is right. God does bring about new life because of pain. God does bring about maturation in my life as the result of pain and all these different things. They are not going to see that in the moment, though.
Right.
So, like, when you show up at the hospital, hey, listen, God's got a plan. You're going to be better for this. That's not what they want to hear at the funeral. That's not what they need to hear at the hospital. So just understanding when people are hurting, a ministry of presence is much more appropriate than trying to pontificate on life's big lessons. And if someone says, no, I do want to get into that discussion, I would refuse to do that. I would go, listen, I know that you think that you want to have this discussion. It's not going to go good. Like, the practical, rational thought doesn't make sense to us when we're in the midst of pain. So it's just not the right time, so you got to pick your shots better. Yeah,
absolutely. I loved the statement that you talked about how the most constant things in our life are often the least recognizable things in our lives. I think that is something that really, like, when you think, like, well, it doesn't feel like he's here. Like, that's what we say. Like, it doesn't feel like he's here. It doesn't feel like he was there. Where was he? Remembering that, I think, is incredibly important. I thought that was a really, really
Have you ever, like, do you wear sunglasses?
Yes.
They feel weird on your face because you don't always wear glasses.
Yes.
Exactly. People that wear glasses, at some point they have to forget that they even have glasses on because they always have glasses on. It's like that. Like for me. My head and my face are like easily irritated, which I don't know. Much like all of me, I guess. But like my head and my face are easily irritated by stuff. So like I like to wear sunglasses. But like I'm constantly fidgeting with them because I don't wear glasses.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with this hat. Like I've messed with it.
I noticed it on Sunday.
I'm constantly messing with it because it's like irritating my forehead. So I want to try to find the spot that like it doesn't do that, and it's because I don't always have a hat on.
Right.
Or I don't always have this hat on.
Yeah.
But like the most constant things in life are things that we almost forget are even there. So therefore, like, and that's what we know. If you're a person that believes that the Bible is the Word of God, then you should be a person that understands that what He says about Him being with you. Again, what the Bible has to say about God's presence with you does nothing for an atheist or an agnostic because they don't believe it's the Word of God anyways.
Yeah.
I would talk to them differently, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to answer a question for someone at a church.
Yeah.
What the Bible has to say about God's presence with you is so much more important than how you feel or anything else in regards to whether or not, how do I know God wasn't with me in this? It's like, no, actually His Word says He is with you. Psalm 139, there's nowhere that you can go to even get away from that.
Yeah.
Even if you wanted to get away from it, you could not get away from it if you're going to take a biblical view of the topic. And then Psalm 43, what was that? Was that the next one? Yeah. 46, Psalm 46, ever present help in time and trouble. Like ever present, always there. Ever meaning always, present meaning there. Like He's always there in your times of trouble.
Yeah.
And what most people don't realize is the reason why you made it through that in the first place is because He was there.
Yeah.
The reason why you can get on the other side of it and complain about the lack of God in the midst of it is because He was actually there.
Yeah.
It's like what Frank Turk always talks about. Like most people that try to use arguments against God to say that He's not there are really just people that are sitting in His lap to slap His face. Like He's the one that helped you get through the pain to get to the point where you could even look back and complain about Him in the first place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I know, like, the
Again,
things
that's
that
not
I have
funeral
had to,
talk, though, either.
Right, no, it's not.
That's
It's
not funeral
It's-
talk either, though. Please don't go tell someone that at a funeral.
Yeah, like I had lunch with someone yesterday, and they were sharing with me about a young lady that they had adopted, and some of her, like, this is a question that she kind of has and struggles with. And I was like, I'd love to share my testimony with her sometime, because I think, like, for me, I've gone through some of those terrible things, but like looking back, I'm able to see and know like that He was right there with me through every single moment. Like, even though it was horrible, terrible, I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Yeah.
I know that He was there, and I know that He was there because of what He's brought me through, and also like what He taught me throughout that season and time, and from that season and time. But so I think the next thing that you talked about, though, was the good parents know that sometimes pain is necessary.
Yep.
And
we don't give God that same benefit of the doubt whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, we all know really good parents that sometimes we have to watch from a distance. Like, I was trying to think of an exact instance because I know that I've done this, but like it's escaping. But I know that I've like stood at a distance and watched my children do something destructive.
Yeah.
Simply because I know, all right, their life's probably not in danger, but when they fall, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And they're going to realize, hey, don't climb on that fence. It's not a good idea.
Yeah. So I thought of so we have 3 kids, and Carter's our oldest. When Carter was a little baby, or toddler, I should say, and he began climbing on the couch and like being a little wild, and he would fall, like falling from the couch as a 16-month, 18-month-old baby. Like, our couch wasn't super high, so like, and we had carpeted floors, so we knew he wasn't going to get super hurt, but he'd learn his boundaries. And my husband would always say, like, hey, he's got to learn. Like, he has to learn what he can and can't do, where, what he's capable of, and where his boundaries are. But then when we had Esme, our daughter, and she got to that point, he was super overprotective, like wanted to pull her off every single time. And I said, hey, what what happened to they have to learn?
Yep.
And I just thought of that because I was like, oh man, because I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to our kids, we can tend to put boundaries on them
Yep.
and think that they're not capable of something that they actually are.
Yep.
But allowing them to go through those moments or those seasons to like push themselves and see what they are capable of. I had that same feeling when my kids, like this summer, they have started doing, like, being much more brave in the pool, jumping off diving boards, like doing all kinds of things. And I want so badly to just be like, no, don't do that. Or like helicopter mom in moments. But I had to stand back and be like, I can't stop this because they're going to learn a little bit better if I let them try and let them do it.
Yeah. As much as we wish that people learn simply by listening, more so than anything, much more in our life is caught than taught. And so it's like a lot more is just like, I'm just going to figure that out on my own. I know that you told me not to touch that hot stove, but until I have the blister on my hand, I don't really have a reason to believe you that I'm not going to do that. And so there's so many people that like, and for me, I was one of those people. You could tell me what I was getting into was going to be harmful, but until I experienced it for myself, I just wasn't. And so that really, like, there's just, that's how a lot of people are wired. We wish that our kids, if we say, hey, if you jump off of that, you jump off of the stairs right there, or whatever it is, you're going to get hurt. And then they go, okay, I just won't do that. But the truth is they're probably going to jump. They're going to smash their face, break their arm. Then they're going to, then everything's going to, like, oh, I shouldn't do that in the future.
Yeah.
Right? That's how we end up growing, is a lot more through experience than by being lectured. And it's hard as a parent, but we know that that's what good parents do.
Yeah.
So it frustrates me that we don't give God that same latitude in his parenting.
Absolutely.
We know that it's good for people to go through, for our kids to go through some stuff to help them grow.
Yeah.
There's sometimes, like, parents just have to take their hands off of situations, or else they end up enabling
Yeah.
a child to not mature. And then the moment they go, you know what, you're in this mess, you're going to have to fix it yourself. We know that that's good for them, and yet sometimes God allows things to happen to us and goes, you know what, I'm gonna help you through it, but you're going to have to get through it. But on the other end, you're going to be better for him. We go, well, how dare you, God? How dare you do that? And he goes, I'm thinking, well, why doesn't he get the same permission that we do as parents?
Yeah.
Especially if we know that it's the best practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that parenting best practice actually came from him, us watching how he parents, and then we decided that was the best way to do it. And then all these hundreds of years later, we look back and now we criticize him for it.
Yeah, I think we can be very critical in things, but I loved your thought on how when somebody talks about their pain and their suffering and those kind of things, recognizing and telling them, like, hey, do you know that you sound a lot like Jesus?
Yeah.
That right there was something that I think was a really big highlight. Like, that's something that I think you can have a conversation with someone who is not a follower of Jesus as well as a follower of Jesus, reminding them, or like if they're a follower of Jesus, reminding them what Jesus did go through, that Jesus did suffer as well, and that he knows pain just as much, if not more.
Yeah. I think that this is, like, part of the thing why, like, again, not funeral talk, but just, like, when people aren't in pain talk, why it frustrates me so much that people use pain, suffering, and evil as some sort of indictment against God, when I go, like, do you understand the story that he's telling?
Yeah.
Like, he didn't spare himself from it. Why would you, like, it frustrates me because I go, like, why is there this double standard that Jesus is allowed to die for you because of what it will do on your behalf, and yet you won't also suffer some because of what it might do in your life and other people's lives? This seems like a really weird, like, thing that we've set up here where we go, oh, it's okay for Jesus to die because we know, like, when you're reading the story of the crucifixion or whatnot, you're like, because you already know how it turns out, you're okay with it. But, like, just because you don't know how it's going to turn out in your life, you're not okay with it. God's supposed to treat you differently. Like, I just have major issues with us, like, thinking like that. And it's like that's the story that's being told throughout the scriptures, is how things come to die and then are raised back to life. Like, Jesus even tells a parable, or I don't know whether it's a parable or whatnot. He talks about a seed. He says a seed has to be buried, and I actually didn't know this, but when seeds and such are buried, they actually die, and then it's from the death of the seed that a new plant is then birthed. Like this is actually woven into every fabric of society. Like things die, then new life comes as the result of it. This is just the way that the world is created, and so it shouldn't be a shock to us that the greater story being told of how Jesus brings new life was ultimately through death.
Yeah.
And so for us, and again, none of this helps us not experience pain.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that our pain doesn't hurt like crazy.
Right.
It just means that at some point in our life, we can get enough perspective to go, I understand why this happened. I understand, and on some level, I can even appreciate it, even though I wish there was an easier way to get there.
Yeah. And I think something that I thought of within it is that, like, if you're not in community with people, then you will feel super alone. Like, when you're not in community with people that can sit with you, can be there in those moments of pain, that can help, maybe speak truth if you need truth in those moments, or pray with you, sit with you, weep with you, you're going to struggle a little bit more. Like, even Jesus, like, before the cross, when you see him go into the garden to pray, before all those things happen, in Matthew 26 and 38, like, he tells the 3 disciples that he took with him, is the 3 that he took, he said, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. And in that moment, it's like he's saying, look, like, I am struggling. Like, this is hard. What I'm about to face is going to be the most difficult thing that I will do.
Yeah.
I need you here with me. Like, be here with me. He doesn't say, like, for them to do anything specific. Just be here and keep watch with me. And in those moments, I think it points back to that, like, hey, in those moments, like, you just have to sit there with them. You just have to be there with them in those times. But having those people that you can go to and say, hey, I'm really struggling. This is really difficult. Can you just sit with me? Can you just be with me?
Yeah.
Can you just pray with me? It's really, really important. So then the next thing that you said was that the no pain, no gain. That, there's growth that happens within the pain, like you were talking about with the seed and all of that too. Like, there's something that happens within pain that can bring purpose, that can bring some kind of growth. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple scriptures I looked at: Romans 5, James 1, 2 Corinthians 4. We could look at other passages as well. That it's obvious that what we go through helps build endurance. Endurance leads to perseverance. Perseverance, on and on and on, as they kind of lay out in the scriptures. And again, on the other side of Jesus' suffering and death, he came out different. He came out in a more glorified state. This is what happens through your pain and suffering. This is what Paul says in 2 Corinthians. Like, through what you're going through is building up a weight of glory within you. And this is something that it's not going to be taken from you.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that, like, it makes you the type of person that lasts. It makes you the type of person that can be trusted with bigger and bigger assignments within the kingdom. Like, I know without a shadow of a doubt, most of the stuff that I've gone through in my life all coincided to me becoming, the position I am in leadership. Like, when I became the lead teaching pastor was when our house was broken into, and I experienced unbelievable anguish and mental health issues that still have some lingering effects to this day. And then I didn't even think about this until just now, but, like, as I was being called to be the sole lead pastor of this church, 1 week later, COVID shut the church down. And I was thinking, well, God, why the heck are you doing this? Like, I finally got my chance to lead the church that I love and that I've always wanted to do this, and now this whole thing is gonna mess it up. And when people told me that there would be effects of this that would last for far beyond whenever they said that you no longer have to wear masks and have to stay indoors, I always thought, no, that's crazy. Everything will just go back to normal. And here we are, almost fall 2023, and I can tell you, as far as ministry is concerned, there's some major lingering effects that I've still yet to be able to pastor a church like what existed before the pandemic. And so like these major moments in my ministry where God has wanted to use me have both come with significant amounts of pain to prepare me
Yeah.
for what it was that he was calling me to do. And I mean, I can't imagine how many different people in the Bible that we could go to that would have a similar story, that there was an incredible amount of pain coupled with an incredible calling that God had on their life. I cannot remember which one of the, might have been Leonard Ravenhill, I could be totally wrong, that says that until God has completely broken a man, he cannot greatly use him. I could have just butchered that quote, but that's the essence of it. And it's like, I always thought, well, does that have to be necessary? Like, couldn't he just like use someone without like their life having to go crazy first? And it's like, he could, but there's something about this journey through pain that like it makes the type of people that God wants to do significant things through. And so if you want a pain-free life, I'm actually convinced God could possibly even let you have that if he didn't have great things in store for you.
Right.
But because he does have great things in store for you, he's not going to let you take the easy way out.
Yeah.
He's just not going to do that. You may try to take the easy way out, and I promise if you do, you'll never experience. You might have like a nice life, but you'll never have the life that God intended for you to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think about even the transition that I took from kids ministry to this position. Like, I knew, and for a couple years, I was feeling like, hey, like, the things that I've been through in life, they can, ultimately help a lot of people when I can be in a space to share that. But, like, kids is not really the place to be able to share some of these things and do some of these things. And so I knew, like, in that moment, like, when I was feeling that there was something different and something more. But I remember when it came like really clear to me that I could have purpose from my pain was whenever I got to first share my story of my struggle and how God brought me out of that with someone. And in that moment, I was like, oh, this is what this is for. Because as like 2 Corinthians 1:4 says that he comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we'll be able to give them the same comfort that God has given us. Yeah. And I think in essence, that is that like purpose from your pain. Like, hey, God can help you, has helped you through this, will help you through this. And then you will be able to turn around and then help someone else through something either that they're going through similarly, or even just give them that hope to know that there is hope, like that this won't always be the way that it is. And I think like how you were saying on Sunday, like you connect because of the struggles that we face. Like everybody can connect with a struggle, with a pain, with difficult situations, but not everybody can connect with success. Yeah. And so that is part of why like we live in a broken world. And so within our brokenness, the things that we have gone through, the things that maybe have broken us down, in those things, those are the things that help us connect to those other people who are also broken. Yeah. And I love listening to it's Tony Collier's podcast, Broken Crown Still Collar. And that's the whole like essence is that like, hey, even though something might be broken, there's still purpose in it. Like you can still be used like a broken crown. You can still use that broken crown to collar. And it's within those things and realizing that like, hey, even though this was difficult or is difficult, there's still purpose. Yeah. Like, and getting through and understanding that it is temporary. I think where you brought in the point about how, Jesus in his death, like when he cried out and said, hey, God, like, why have you forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? When he did that, like he didn't get his answer in that moment. Yeah. He died. But it was 3 days later. Yeah. When he got that answer. And so for us, it's knowing and remembering, like, it may not be immediate. It may be 3 years. It may be 30 years. It may take a while for you to fully understand. Because I know for me with some of the trauma and abuse I went through, I mean, it was about 8 years later before I got to share that with somebody in a way that it helped.
Yeah.
And so I think that is something to hold on to and remember. Scott, anything else that you would like to share from Sunday?
No, I think just remember when the right times are to share the right things that we've talked about, but I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, your story matters and your testimony matters, and part of that is from what we've talked about, that the things that you go through are things that you might have to endure in order to help others, or also in order to just receive or give God glory for what he has done and what he can do. So I hope that you remember to take your story, maybe write it down if you've never written it down before, and pray about how God can use those things. Try to look back and remember those times that he was there and faithful. And next week we'll be covering the canonization of the Bible, so it'll be pretty in-depth, and I'm really excited to hear more about that. But we hope that you like and subscribe to this podcast and join us again next week for more content.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.